Corinth was a trade center. It was the trade center of the Roman Empire. It was an incredibly wealthy city, incredibly wealthy because everything that traveled across the Mediterranean, linking the continents, tended to go through Corinth. I won't go into there. You should have caught the series. But it was all commerce, Africa, Europe, Asia, had to go through Corinth. It was easy. It was the easiest way to travel. Because if you didn't, you had to go all the way down and around. And, it added weeks and months to your trip. You can cut straight across. I won't get into that. It was very wealthy, had the most beautiful temples to any god they can think of. The main god there was Aphrodite, which was up on the cliff overlooking the harbor. And Aphrodite, to worship Aphrodite, you had an orgy. That's just a reality. A lot of their gods were into that kind of stuff, which is why in 1 Corinthians he says, no, we don't do it. People who don't know history think that 1 Corinthians is a backslidden congregation. 2 Corinthians is a upward congregation. No, they came into the kingdom and says, let's have a worship service. Let's get together and have an orgy. Because that's what they knew. And Paul said, no. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore. That's the way you used to do it. We don't do it that way. And they listened to him. And then in the second letter, they listened to him. He said, well, now that you paid attention, let me explain to you the way you're supposed to do it, because I told you how not to do it. This is what I did when I was with the Lemba in the Copper Belt region, the high priest of the time of Ezra. I told them, I gave them a Tree of Life Bible, and I said, divide into two groups, men and women, because you have to, according to their culture, and start studying 2 Corinthians. Because 2 Corinthians tells you how to run a service, and don't let any white rabbi from the United States tell you how to do it. Because they didn't know there were white Jews, they didn't know there were rabbis. They knew nothing about talits, kippas, all this stuff that we take for granted as being Judaism. That's didn't happen before the Babylonian captivity. And I said, don't let those, and he was like stunned, number one, that I was Jewish, and number two, I'm a rabbi trying to talk to a high priest. And he didn't know what a rabbi was, but he was the high priest in that particular enclave. And so it's the challenge of rising up and dealing with the quagmire of humankind. And you have to fight a fight. I was dealing with Thomas Kapoki, the apostolic leader in Northeastern, and he says, I don't understand why Paul keeps saying we're in spiritual warfare when the Bible teaches we have the victory in Messiah. And I said, you live where you live and you don't understand you're in spiritual warfare? And I gave him some key scriptures to understand that. Of course we have the victory, but the victory is not in this world, because this world is corrupted because of the fall in the garden. We will not inherit all that we are until we see Messiah and become like he is. We see him face to face. So in 2 Corinthians, he's talking about the struggle to be kingdom people in the world. In 2 Corinthians 4:16, therefore we don't lose heart. Though our outward man is decaying, yet our inward man is renewed day by day. I'm going to turn around and read that. There's a terrible glare on that one. It's easier to read that one. Just kidding, because there's a glare I have to see unless I move. We don't lose heart because our outward man is decaying. Life is difficult. People who believe that when you come into the kingdom, life is good. We're in a rose garden. If something goes wrong, it's because you don't have faith. The faith doctrine that only exists in the West. It's a Western theology. It doesn't believe anywhere else. I believe it, therefore it is. I can claim it, name it, claim it. And it's a big theology in the West. It doesn't exist in the rest of the world because the rest of the world lives in the world. And you can't explain to somebody, those of you who are around the world, the Lemba, perfect example, the high priest, their biggest challenge, they had to walk 10 kilometers to get water. And if you recall, we took up an offering and we went through the rigmarole of 2 years of negotiating with the government, we put them in a well, and it led to a revival. Because I said, God can put water right in your camp. And he said, if you do that, we know you spoke the truth. I said, well, then through your generosity, we put in a well, and everybody's flocking to it now. And the whole story is not what Beth Messiah did, what Rabbi Judah did, what Rabbi Alexis. They connected the God of Israel, and the God of Israel put water right in their camp. And the Lamba said, you need to come see us now. I think they just want, well, you know what? It's nothing easy about it. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. Even to do well is a struggle. And he said, but Paul, he's talking, we're trying to learn a whole new system here. Do you ever find out when you come into the kingdom, it's a whole new system? Then you stumble into Messianic Judaism, you find out everything you learned out in the kingdom was wrong. And we are trying to be biblical, which stretches some of you because you're not used to being biblical, you're used to being religious. Because that's the main power in this country. But the reality is, our outward man is decaying, but our inward man is being renewed day by day. On the outside, I'm falling apart. On the inside, I'm coming together. And the two don't always mesh. The next verse, it says, our trouble, light and momentary. Light and momentary. You know, what my bride does not know is I got a call because our house is there'll be power here and not there, then that power will go off and it'll come here, then that power will go off and it'll come here. Our power come off and set off our alarm, our burglar alarm, and showed there were people walking around our house. And I got a call. I said, no, it just means power came on in that particular section. I was like, oh, I'm glad I answered my phone because I didn't mean to have it in my pocket. It's like, oh, that's the way of the world. That's light and momentary. That's light and momentary. You know, it doesn't mean anything. You know, when you've been without power for a week, and now you only run into a glitch where you have temporary power floating around your house for a couple of days while they try to sort it out for you. It's not. I still have Thomas Kapoki who walks around a mountain with his phone trying to find a signal so he can talk to me while he's watching for lions so he doesn't get eaten. And my wife was there one day. He was doing his best, walking around, holding his phone up. He has to climb a mountain because of where he lives. That's the only signal. And he's watching any lions here. And he said, I apologize you have to wait so long for me to try to get a signal. And I felt like saying, don't you know how important I am? You should find a signal without a lion before you call me. It's like, Pat, you know, come on, Thomas. I don't feel bad enough, and you're going to apologize because I have to wait. Will you try to find a signal and not be eaten by a lion? You're making me wait? And it goes on to say, the next verse, which is summation, it is an, even though Paul was writing it, pay attention, this is a Greek letter, therefore it is what? Analytical. I'm glad you pay attention because you're going to have to straighten out Marty next. Analytical. Greek and Romans are allegorical. And even though he's Jewish, he's writing to a Greek congregation, there he's going analytical. Therefore, he goes mathematical, and this is the therefore at the end of we're struggling in this life. And then this is the summation in a mathematical formula. Just accept it as analytical. Jewish section of the Bible, most of the Bible is allegorical. Roman and Greek sections are analytical. That's just a cultural reality. God can reach all people, and God will reach all people any way he can reach all people, and God can reach all people through any religion because you just got to get past the religion and get to God. That's why we have the 70 sacrifices for the nations during the time of the temple. God knows there'll be people out there that want to come in, and people say, yeah, but they didn't have a sacrifice. Yes, they did, because God took care of it. God does that. And so we look at not what can be seen, but what cannot be seen. See, what I see as I'm sitting here in services for the first time, it seems like a long time since we've been together, and my alarm company says there's somebody wandering around your house. It's like, no, there's not. It just means the power got to my security system and glitched it. But it doesn't make it easy. So I don't pay too much seen. What is seen is temporary. What cannot be seen is eternal. In the grand scheme of eternity, a day with wandering electricity in my house, I still live better than Thomas does, who thinks he is blessed beyond his own. He has multiple congregations. His own congregation now, he lives in a village next to them. He has a river next to his hut. It's running water. And so on Shabbat, he goes down to the river, shoos away the alligators. Crocodiles, excuse me, I'm in the wrong nation. Yeah, crocodiles. And they are big over there, and you got to be real careful going down to the water because they lay underneath and we feel bend over. But he, splashes, go away, gets a 5-gallon and walks it over to the service so all the people in the village can have some water. He says he has it easy. He just has to go down and get it. I said, yeah, you have it easy. We had the power out and had to take a shower in cold water. Life is hard. But you know what? That's temporary. What I can't see is eternal. I tell you, spiritually, I think Thomas is in a better place than I am. I live in the distraction of an affluent society. I'm totally distracted. I live good. I'm fighting with insurance companies to explain why, although I have hurricane coverage, this doesn't count. Because no matter what kind of insurance you have, it's just send the money, don't ask. And I know a lot of you are in this, but I had specific hurricane coverage. Yeah, but it wasn't a hurricane, it was wind, or it wasn't a hurricane, it was water. Or, it's like, what I can see is temporary. It's such a minor thing. What cannot be seen is eternal. I could tell so many stories about Thomas because he's just a godly man. I don't know that I'll ever get him here. Compared to Alex, who's the same country, but at least he lives in the capital of Lusaka now. Thomas is still way out in the bush. He has to walk 2 days to get to a bus stop. Another 2 days on the bus to get down to Lusaka. He lives in the boonies. But you know what? He's a man in whom there is no guile. I know him. Boy, is he a sweet man. He's a sweet man. And you ought to see him get dressed for Shabbat service. You should see them. It is an incredible sight. These are poor, subsistent farmers. They scratch in the dirt, they put plants in, and then they get water from near his house, and they water it. And if God is good, he will bring them something to eat. They're subsistence farmers. It's a hard life. And they all live in mud huts. Shul, their synagogue, white stucco thatched roof, and they all are wearing suits and dresses. And then they go home to their mud hut. But it's Shabbat. And it means so much to them. And I thought, wow, we don't like to come out when it's raining. But here's the concept of, everything we see is temporary. What is not seen is eternal. And then he goes on to explain in mathematical formula in verse 2, the next verse. What's the next verse? Just give me the next verse. There's no next verse? What is that? 2 Corinthians, okay, I'm looking at my notes. 5. I actually have it in my notes, I just don't pay attention. For we know that if the tent, our earthly home, a lot of people lived in tents. They weren't, mansions. Some were nice tents, and there were some mansions. But most people lived in tents, small places. And the tent of our earthly home is torn down. We have a building with God, a home not made with human hands, eternal in the heavens. You know, we're going to die someday, but that's okay because only your body's going to die. You are eternal because you're in the image of God. Who cares if your body is breaking down? To live is Messiah. To die is gain. It's okay. And then it's a jump of inequality in mathematical concept that we have a home not made with human hands but made in heaven. And then next verse marries to that the equalizing part of the equation. For this we groan, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling. In other words, my body, you know, most of you knows I'm walking a little bit better. I'm working on it. It's not always comfortable, but I'm walking, and I will get better. I had my knee replaced almost 3 months ago now, and I'm better up standing than sitting down trying to get up. But you know, it's okay. I'm looking forward to my heavenly dwelling. You know, there is no arthritis in the kingdom of God. Isn't that a nice thing? Isn't that a comforting thought? No arthritis. No confusion of the mind. And then it caveats into a continual mathematical formula. Verse 3, if indeed we have put it on, we will not be found naked. Okay? So we groan, longing to be clothed in our heavenly, it's not up there, I'll look, dwelling. If indeed, that's okay. If and only if we have put it on, we'll be found not to be naked. This goes all the way back to the picture in the garden. And I know some of you don't understand this, but when the first couple, Ishi, Adam and Eve, even though she wasn't a different name till after the fall, but when they fell in the garden, the terminology that they used when they hid from God is they were both naked. And I know most of you are familiar with this, but people online and people that visit with us have no idea because they think naked means without clothes. Okay, but at that point in history, no one had ever worn clothes. They had no reference points to not having clothes because nothing in creation had clothes. And all of a sudden they realize they're naked. It's like, well, we mean they realized they were naked. Of course they were naked. They were created that way. Naked has nothing to do with clothing. It has to do with being transparent. It has to do with transparent. When we're naked with each other, we're transparent with one another. And we cease to be, we put up walls. So it ties to all these